Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Canadians Abroad. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming. I will be joined by my colleague, Alex Gonge-Ruzic, and today we'll be discussing John Herdman getting linked to the TFC job, Tajon Buchanan scoring once again, Alphonso Davies missing out on some silverware, and plenty more. So hopefully you guys are excited, and if you are, let's get into the episode now. All right, Alex, we got some massive news to touch on today as friend of the channel Joshua Cloak, who works at The Athletic, had a big story surrounding John Herdman potentially leaving the Canadian national team and joining TFC. I mean, I was shocked when I read it. Alex, I'm just curious to see what was your thoughts when you first read that article?
Yeah, it was a big Monday news drop from Joshua Cloak, and it was fascinating. And I mean, it's one where, first of all, it made sense for Toronto. They're obviously undergoing a complicated coaching search, to say the least, after Bob Bradley departed. It's been a while now since he left, and they want to find the right replacement. And in terms of someone where, if you're in Toronto's situation, it's been a rough few years for the club. The culture is completely evaporated. You just need a fresh start. John Herdman is among those names. Immediately you think of someone who can shift a culture, reset a culture. We've seen what he's done with the men's national team. You saw what he did with the women's national team. You saw what he did in New Zealand. This is someone who is known for that. So it makes absolute sense, first and foremost, for Toronto FC to be looking at a candidate like that, where Herdman can come in. You know, he's been an international manager, so it's a chance for a club opportunity. I could see where it would make sense for Toronto FC. Then, of course, you see from Herdman's perspective, the next point is, would it make sense for Herdman? And that one, it's kind of, you're on the fence about, because again, you have a unique chance to take this men's team to the 2026 World Cup. It's there. It's already secured. You have the 3-year run up to do so, to prepare, potentially playing a Copa America next year. You've got a talented group of players that you've been working with for a while. That's tempting to take. That's a lot of incentive there. But I guess also with TFC at the same time, they're a club that they don't mess around financially, let's just say. So I think that's the last point. It's like, okay, at least there's something where for Herdman, he could also be tempted by the financial aspect of going to manage Toronto FC. So it's one where it's very complicated, as we can see, very multifaceted, but you can see why the links make sense for TFC and where Herdman could potentially be swayed.
Yeah, I don't really want to see Herdman leave just because I think there's still a job for him to do here. This is a very exciting time to be a Canadian soccer fan. You have the Copa America coming up, plus a World Cup that we are co-hosting, a good core group of players. Young players are still going over to Europe. Like, that 2026 side could be pretty intriguing one. John Herdman has had some comments, though, about, the Federation not taking the sport in this country very seriously. And if you look at the TFC side of things, despite the disaster that is going on right now at TFC, you can't deny the fact that they will go out and they will try to be at the best of Major League Soccer. It's not working right now, but yes, John Herdman doesn't have that club experience, but you'd have to imagine that this is a project. And that's what, if I would want to see John Herdman take this job, I'd want him to look at it as a project. This is not a quick fix by any stretch. Kind of the way like how Greg Vanney went there. He had a process, he led in, and then he had that culture that he built. We've seen John do it in a ton of different areas. So I feel like there'd be a little pressure on him at the beginning, but I feel like if you gave him the ropes to come in here, clean shop, get the players out that he doesn't need, bring players in, and just kind of put what we know can make John Herdman so special, I think it could be a very intriguing fit. Do you kind of get what I'm saying though? Around like it's a project, right? It can't just be go in there, expect results. John Herdman has got a really clean house, I think, if he wants to have any type of success, if indeed he goes to TFC.
Yeah, look, I think it's something where there's a lot of incentives to this TFC job, and that's why I'd say, if the news ends up materializing that he takes it and that ends up happening, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, the financial aspect, just the fact, like you mentioned, a chance to reset a club, work with some talented players, finally get that segue to club he's looking for. And perhaps if you do well at a job like this, you can open up doors to going to Europe, going elsewhere in MLS, et cetera, et cetera. I'd say, if anything, it's not the TFC job that's the bigger factor, because I think, again, it's something where if all things were created equal, say Herdman didn't have a contract after the 22 World Cup, I'd say it's something we'd absolutely consider. I think, again, it's just how much does he value the 2026 project, the run up to what because again, we have to remember that since he was hired, of course, he had his eye on 2022, but he was like, I'm also in for the long run. I want to do something special in 2026. And the runway is set up so clearly, and with the work he's done, I guess the question is, how much does he value that, especially when the factors with Canada Soccer come into play? Is that going to be that much of a deterrent that he wants to give up the project and take something like TFC? So I think really this TFC job is interesting because we're really going to see where he stands in that regard. Because like you mentioned, he's made it clear with Canada Soccer what needs to happen, what he feels about the current situation, about his intentions to do something special in 2026. And now if TFC is coming in with this, these proposals, these talks, potentially even an offer for him, then it makes it, that puts even more pressure on Canada Soccer to look like, okay, like this option's there, I can take it, but I also want to stay. And I think that's also an interesting layer to this.
Now, if Herdman does indeed leave, where does that leave Canada? Because Herdman has done some incredible things with this program. The qualifying run that us Canadians are very proud of, it was very impressive. You can't get around it. Not the best showing at the World Cup, but I mean, a decent Nations League. I don't think anyone can look at the Canadian side and that US side and be like, Canada were the favorites. Yes, we lost in the finals. I was pretty disappointed. I know a lot of Canadians were, but it's not like he completely underperformed. John Herdman, if he moves on, what type of coach do you think is out there to replace him? Is indeed, can we find someone that could give you just as much as John Herdman did?
Yeah, that's going to be the $1 million question. I think that's the biggest aspect in all this, because again, if any time there's a threat of losing the coach, the question is more, can you replace him? And in this case, it's not so clear because it's hard to say that, okay, with the current situation, Canada Soccer, what would a potential hire look like? So I think there's no doubt there'd be interest in the Canada job. Again, there's top tier players. I'm sure coaches would love to see a team like Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David. Just imagine what they can do. And, hosting a World Cup, that's also another incentive that coaches will look at. But it's just a matter of, okay, could the financial demands of such coaches be met? Because again, those sorts of top tier coaches, they don't come cheap. Again, it comes down to that. Then also what kind of replacements are there internally? Because there's some good, decent options in Canada. You look at the CPL, you look at, across MLS, you look at those options. And then lastly, we have to remember this isn't the first time John Herdman's had links. Obviously in 2022, there were the championship links, which were very, soft, so to say, but they were out there. I'm sure Canada Soccer probably heard about them. And then, earlier this year, it's no coincidence that shortly after John Herdman had the New Zealand interest, which we have to remember about, they hire someone like Phil Neville. Not saying it's something where Phil Neville's being lined up as a replacement, but that's all of a sudden someone who's there who could be ready to step up if need be. So you do wonder what kind of names they're looking at. If this hasn't been the first time, they surely have a list of names and have been planning for something like that.
Now, Alex, there was another manager that was linked to the TFC job. I mean, maybe he's an option for the Canada job as well. I don't know. That is Forge FC head coach Bobby Smyrniotis. He's done some incredible things in the Canadian Premier League. I think it's a little unfair that maybe he hasn't got a look. We know how much he likes to, have full control, so maybe he can't get those options in Major League Soccer at the moment, but he's definitely a coach that's on the up. What would you make of the fit of him potentially going to TFC or Canada if John Herdman ends up going to TFC?
Yeah, I mean, he would be an intriguing pick because we know what he can do for player development first and foremost. I mean, just you can look at the list of alumnus that have come through that Sigma system, and it's a very long list and it's an impressive one. So I think for TFC, it'd be interesting to see, okay, what could you do potentially with a bigger budget? Because again, no secret about TFC, the size of the budget that they have to, we just see some of the money they've splashed on players. Okay, what could that look like if they put it in? Because they have a very unique access, I say, to the GTA region, which is one filled with talent, especially in the men's side. There's a reason why you hear all the jokes about Brampton on the national team, and you've seen what Sigma has done, and there's just countless examples. So I'd love to see what someone like Smyrniotis could do there with that talent pool, with those resources, able to supplement, those players with top talent like TFC aims to chase. But then also for Canada, it's an intriguing fit, and it's something to watch out for. The fact that he's developed so many of these players that they'll be familiar with him, they'll know him, and that could always be something useful, a familiar voice to kind of come in instead of that's a tough thing when you bring in a brand new manager from abroad. It's sometimes they don't really know the players, they don't really know the system. It can be complicated to learn on the fly with how complicated international soccer is. Someone like Bobby who knows the players, who knows the system, I think that could be a big familiarity boost for a job like the national team, and that's something to consider. Could a guy like a Smyrniotis or guys who've been very involved in the grassroots of soccer again across the CPL. There's examples like Patrice Geyser over at Halifax, or a James Merriman, a Tommy Wilden Jr. Those sorts of hires could be intriguing for that other aspect too.
Moving along now to Alphonso Davies, who had the opportunity to win some silverware over the weekend, but unfortunately himself and Bayern lost 3-0 against RB Leipzig in the Super Cup. Alex, it is not the start you want, especially knowing how much Bayern struggled last season.
Yeah, and it's a continuing concern, I think, for Bayern. It's dated back to last season. They were in such a great position at one point. There was dreams of a treble, and then all of a sudden, Julian Nagelsmann was fired. And then next, Thomas Tuchel came in, and they dropped out of the Pokal. They dropped out of the Champions League, at least to the champions of the Champions League, or eventual champions. And then they narrowly scraped out the Bundesliga by the back of their teeth. So it was not a great end to this season, and it's not a great start. And I think the biggest thing looking at this Bayern team is that a lot of concerns have kind of remained unanswered. I mean, you can start with Tuchel and what's going on there, if he's the right hire. Was it the right move to sack Nagelsmann so abruptly? Yes, there was it wasn't Bayern's best season, but he was finally getting a bit of form. They were kind of ticking, and then one loss and he was gone. Then you could look at their squad. They still haven't replaced Manuel Neuer. They haven't upgraded their midfield. They made some nice signings at the back, but their midfield was a huge issue last year, and it looks like it could be one this year. They finally addressed their problem up front about a year or two late, getting in Harry Kane. So it just kind of feels like I look at that squad and it's disjointed all over the place. I'm not particularly surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not convinced by the center backs. I'm not a big fan of Upamecano. I don't think that they're going to gel together. I don't think the profiles all fit where they can play together like that. On top of that, Kimmich, who I think is a 6, I think we know he thinks he's a 6. Tuchel's out there and he's kind of telling him that he's not a 6, and he's causing these problems in the squad, despite on paper looking very strong. I just have a feeling it might not gel, and we really saw that against Leipzig. But looking at it from a Canadian perspective, Alphonso Davies under Nagelsmann was thriving in that wing-back role. They played the back three, licensed to go forward. Davies was, in my opinion, probably in the form of his life. And then when Tuchel came in, he wanted to put, his shape on things and turn it into that 4-2-3-1. Are you nervous at all of a full season in a back four, or do you think under Tuchel, Davies will still have a good license to go forward and still get in? Because we know that he can go forward. He's got the speed to track back, but there's just a little bit of, in my eyes, difference when he's able to play in that pure back three, because he just got licensed to roam and do what he does best.
Yeah, I think it's something where if you had the choice, I mean, you'd play him at wing back. That feels kind of like that's the best position for him at this stage, but also I think it's not too bad in a back four. He's played there before to great success. It really will depend on how much license Bayern gives him, and I think they will. I mean, again, that's part of the reason why they were so comfortable turning him into a left back right when they bought him. That speed he has is such a big asset to help him go forward and then come back and not sacrifice. So I still think he will get forward, but it's just unfortunate in the sense that his best role is in that back three when you're putting him as a left wing back. So it's one of those where, from a Canadian perspective, you'd like to see him playing that role, but also on the flip side of it, never a bad thing to be playing in a back four and learning defensive responsibility as long as you continue to get those chances to push up.
Let's hope that it's Pavard that's playing at right back, because odds are that Pavard will kind of tuck in to create a back three and allow Davies to go. If Mazraoui's out there, he's going to have a little bit more defensive responsibility, so I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Ike Ubo scored once again for his new side, Cardiff City, over the weekend. He now has 2 goals in his first 2 matches of the championship season. Incredible start for a striker who needs some confidence.
Tajon Buchanan scored the 2nd goal of his season in all competitions in league play this weekend in a 5-0 win for Bruges over Eupen. Good to see Buchanan in amongst the goals while still playing at right back. That's exactly the sort of involvement you want to see from him at both ends. Also fun note, he scored against U.S. international Gaga Slonina in this game.
There will be at least one Canadian that is guaranteed to win Leagues Cup. The final will see Jacob Schaffelberg and Lucas McNaughton of Nashville take on Inter Miami's Kamal Miller. Although, to be honest, I don't know if anyone is going to bet against Inter Miami because of someone named Leo Messi.
Former York United defender Diadine Abzi is heading out on loan from Pau FC as he's joining Spanish Segunda side CD Leganes on loan for the rest of the season. Big move for Abzi, as it is highly regarded that the second Spanish division is among the best in Europe, arguably right after the Championship, perhaps Germany. So good chance for him to take a step up in level.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for in this edition of Canadians Abroad. I really hope you all enjoyed the episode, and if you did, be sure to tune in for next week's update.